Hi, Gaited Russo here with the Majestic Rider. So today I'd like to talk to you about wringing of the hocks. Wringing of the hocks is a twisting and turning of the hock outward as the foot twists into the ground. Let me show you what this looks like. You may be asking yourself, why is this horse twisting and turning its hocks? It is not doing it on purpose, but it is just moving the way that it was built. These horses usually have a fair amount of looseness up in their hip region, which allows them to swing way underneath themselves, giving them overreach. And because of this, it then transfers down the leg, and then you see the looseness going down the leg into the hock region. So I'm going to show you a couple of horses that I have in for training. Both of these horses were bred for the show ring, so they were bred to have a fair amount of overreach, and both of these horses ring their hocks. One is new into training, so he's been in pasture for about a year, so he's much weaker, and the other one has been in some training for a while, so he's much stronger, and you won't see the ringing as much on him. Okay, so I'm going to show you another horse. Hopefully it'll show up on the video. That its hocks kind of twist and turn. So this horse was also bred for the show arena. So you might see the connection that they're probably breeding something in there. On purpose. So why do you think they would want them to twist and turn their hocks? Well, it might be to reach around their front feet so they don't step on their front feet when they're reaching way up underneath themselves, because you know they want them to move a foot or two up underneath themselves. When you see a horse that wrings its hocks, do not panic. Again, we see this in many of the gaited breeds, but more specifically the Tennessee walking horse. But think of the purpose that you are going to use this horse for. If you are going to go down very steep terrain, that is much harder for a horse that tends to overreach and is very loose in the hips. It's going to make it very difficult for them. So very steep terrain would be very hard for these horses. These horses are more built to go on the flat, inclines and declines, and rolling hills. They can do steep hills. It just should not be all the time, as it makes it much harder for them to get underneath themselves. The oldest age I've seen this in a horse was in the 20s, and that horse is still doing pretty okay and still can do the hills and all of that. But they do have it on Previcox, and once in a while it gets some injections done. So it's not like, if this is a spectacular horse and you don't ride on super hills, should you pass on it? It's a conformational defect. The vet's going to warn you about it. But again, at least in my experience, some of them hold up pretty well. If they really cross over, besides having their hocks kind of shift out like that, and then they're tightrope walking, which is walking on the same line, that's going to be a little bit harder on them. If you're an older person and you're riding, maybe you don't need 20 years out of that horse, so it would be perfectly fine. Or this is an older horse and you just need to get 5 or more years out of it until you get your confidence up and you're riding better. Then again, that horse might work perfectly fine. So it's just something that we see in the gaited horses. And you can see it in any of the breeds, but we see it more in the walking horses, spotted saddle horses, because they're interconnected usually. Not as much in the Rockies and the foxtrotters, although I guess I have seen it in a couple foxtrotters. But maybe they were mixed with walking horses, because they start mixing the breeds around and that's what happens. So just be aware if your horse does that you want to help them, that you want to make sure you keep their muscles strong around their stifles, because we do see more stifle issues with those horses, but they can still do quite well. And you're aware of their ability, and if they're having problems going downhill, don't try to rush them and make them run down the hill. Maybe serpentine down the hill or leg yield them back and forth and make it easier on the horse. Because just like skiing, if you go straight down, that's harder to do. But if you slalom, if you go back and forth, that's why so many people do that. It slows you down, it gives you more control, so they can control their bodies better. But you might already notice when you go down hills, that horse is trying to go sideways, because he's trying to make it easier on himself, not harder on himself. So again, you could try to hold him straight, but then slalom across or make that serpentine to make it easier. So you see that your horse has some ringing in its hocks. So what should you do? Well, first, is this new? If your horse has had this from the beginning, that's different. But if this is new, then something else might be going on, and it would be good to consult your vet. If you notice your horse is wringing its hocks and you also think that the horse is in pain, he's refusing to go downhill or to do certain things, then have your vet check it. It might need some injections. It could have some arthritis up in the sacroiliac joint, which is back here. So it'd be on the top of the horse. And that can make a significant improvement, or maybe just putting it on Previcox or Adequine could make some difference for you. It is good to show everybody who's working with the horse what it does. So if you use a chiropractor, it would be good for the chiropractor to watch that horse move. Possibly some adjustments might help that horse move better. And the chiropractor could also give you strengthening exercises for the horse, as well as stretches to try to decrease the wringing if it is a fair amount. I would also contact your farrier, have him watch the horse move. But remember, if you change anything with its feet, you want it to be very minor. But if it was barefoot and you want to put a shoe on it to give it more support, or if it's wearing its foot unevenly, that might be helpful. But if you do anything too aggressive with the feet, then it will change how that horse is naturally moving, and then could possibly give it problems with its stifle or up in the hip region. So just remember that. If you're going to change anything, do very minor changes slowly, and then you'll be able to pick up if you have made that horse better or worse. But remember, in the long run, this is the way he was made, and we can alternate things slightly, but we do not want to do too much. The wringing in the hocks is probably something that we have brought out in the gaited breeds because they were looking to make these horses overreach more. And humans are always excessive in what we do. And so when we find something that is good, we always try to make it better and better. But for some reason, it seems that we always make things worse. So remember, we bred this into the horse. It might look odd. It might look neurologic to you. But I have seen this in many gaited horses. So just know it is something common that we have bred into them. And it is now some of our responsibility not to buy those horses. You don't have to buy it. But if you have bought a horse that does this, to help to make it better.